Are we on the internet? There we are. Hi. Welcome
We're on
to
the internet.
welcome to Faster Forward. I am Mike Zipser and I am your host today. And joining me is KM Sparza over there on the other side of the screen. He is a wonderful queer trans science fiction author who's been shortlisted for the Hugos and the Nebulas. He lives in Baltimore. He's a great guy. Kellen, welcome to Faster Forward.
Gosh, after that introduction, I feel like I should say Mike is also a great guy. Shortlisted on cool people I want to talk to. Hi, how are you?
All right. So you are one of the people who had a new book, Docile, that came out during the pandemic.
Yeah,
Came out
actually,
in March.
one of the things people say to me frequently is that my book launch event was the last thing they did with other people before they retreated to their COVID bunkers.
Yeah. So what's it been like having to publicize a book and do all that while you're stuck at home?
Well, very interesting for one. I'm currently sitting on the floor of my apartment, which is the only clean part because you can't leave. Publicizing at home at first was very sort of, everyone was scrambling because they had no idea what to do, right? So I had live events scheduled and they were all sort of canceled. And then it was like, should we cancel the ones in July? We'll still be in our isolation. We didn't know, and we ended up canceling everything. And so I feel like because, being in March, being released in March, it was nice because I got to have in-person events and do like pre-events, but then when everything shut down, no one had any idea what they were doing, and actually things were pretty quiet for a while. But and I have a stack of books still over here on my floor that I didn't get to take to any bookstores with me. But it's been great getting to see so many authors online that I would not have gotten to see and chat with otherwise. I got to do a wonderful live stream with N.K. Jemisin pretty early on, which was just like so.
Oh my God!
Wonderful.
Yeah, I read the transcript of that. Wow, that must have been wonderful. She's amazing.
Yeah, very very smart and very kind. Especially as a debut author, sometimes you can be sort of intimidated to talk to authors who have a really wonderful track record, and you assume that they just are the smartest people who you'll have no idea what you're doing. And I've met some very wonderful and lovely established authors who have been great to chat with.
That's wonderful. Well, let's talk a little bit about the book, about Docile. What was the kind of genesis of it? What kicked that off? Was it the characters? Why don't you give us like a quick elevator speech on it so people know what it is if they haven't read it?
Oh, okay. Gosh, I haven't done an elevator pitch in a hot minute now, but it is an alt near future science fiction novel where debt doesn't die when you die. It passes down with you, which is the ultimate student loans nightmare. And our protagonist, Elisha, has $3 million in family debt. And one of the things you can do is basically sell your debt to a private citizen to pay off. And Alexander Bishop III, Dr. Alexander Bishop III, buys Elijah's debt. And however, Elijah refuses to take Docile, the drug, which when given to debtors who are called dociles, he refuses to take this drug, which is his right, and because of that he sees into sort of like the more horrific world of the top 0.01% of the wealthy, and also this sort of changes Alex as their, when I say relationship, I don't mean romantic relationship, just two people who are in the same space together. This changes, their relationship changes both them and sort of the greater world over time. So that was a long elevator ride, but hopefully explanatory.
Yeah, because it is. It's about debt and it's about consent. Yes. Because when you're it's basically debt slavery.
Mm-hmm.
because his $3 million debt. Alex picks it up and pays it off, and keeps him for life. It's a life term
Yeah,
um,
and lots of it's
indentureship.
one of the like this world is supposed to be nefarious, right? Like things are supposed to be sort of wrapped up with that bow to make them look nice, when in fact they are actually horrific underneath. So like this sort of notion of like using the word dociles, and also like when you are a debtor who wants to become a docile, you literally like go to a table and negotiate with someone to work out how many years you're going to serve with them and how much money that's going to like provide for you and stuff like that. So it almost feels like you have like an active part, like you're choosing to do something, when in reality the other choice is like probably go to debtor's prison. So a lot of people are feeding into this system, and there's like promotional posters all around that say things like, I paid off my PhD in 5 years with Docile, and it when I was writing it and started talking about it with like some of my millennial friends, there was sort of a feeling of like, what if I could pay off all of my debt in 5 years and didn't know about it? Like, it is bad and horrific, like to be very clear, but also like there is a reason that it is a system that people use in the book. So
Yeah, and they spell out that as a docile you have 7 rights, and one of
yes.
those is you have the right to take Docilin if you want, or to refuse it, which is what
Mm-hmm.
Elijah does. And that's the key thing in the book. He doesn't take it. And so he is clearly seeing what's going on.
Yeah.
And which is pretty rough.
Yeah, I mean there is a diversity of like jobs that dociles like can
Yeah.
do, but his very specifically is just sort of like to be like, so Alex likes to think of Elijah as his like companion, which again, dressing up, using language to dress things up, especially when like the people who the whole system depends on, which is to say debtors, like don't necessarily have like the education or the vocabulary to even really see like the like to have to say something like, I'm not your companion. This isn't like a mutual happy outing that we're going on, stuff like that. But that is how Alex thinks of Elijah. So um, yeah, it's pretty horrific.
Something I want to bring up that I found really interesting in the structure of the book is it's first person,
Mm.
and the chapters alternate between Elijah's point of view and Alex's point of view. So we kind of are seeing both sides of this from the person doing it. So they both become real people. And
Point
you
of
go
view is
through,
one of sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Point of view is one of my favorite things. Then that's why got so excited when you mentioned it. I love to write first person. Almost all of my published works in first person. Even my short stories. I think I have
Hmm.
like one that's in second person,
Yeah,
which
you can make
is
a dinosaur, but you
You
you can't help
Can't
me.
Help Me. Yeah, I almost forgot the title. That is in second person. um, but one of my favorite things about writing is sort of getting into other people's heads, and that includes the parts that they don't want you to see. I really think books are missing opportunities when they write in first person and don't sort of like give you the fullness of who we are as people. I consider myself, to be someone who tries to be a good person and who aims for goodness, but that doesn't mean I still don't have thoughts that either uh, like I have absorbed by like the brainwashing of society, which are negative and which I try to eradicate from my brain, or that like I simply, everyone has that moment where they text their best friend and just says, "Can I tell you something petty right now?" Like, we all have those thoughts, even if we are, think that we're like or aiming for goodness. And, uh, you know, Elijah obviously is someone that is that you can sympathize with, right? You want him to have a better life. He's doing something for his family. His family has suffered a lot. But Alex, when I decided to include his point of view, one of the things I wanted to show was sort of like somebody who, if you didn't see their point of view, like would very easily just be sort of a cartoonish villain almost. Like nothing that he appears to do is good from an outside perspective. And I'm not saying it's good from an inside perspective either, but there is a lot more sort of like going on, and the 2 points of view, like for this narrative specifically, complement each other, I think, in such a way that it's like watching 2 different sides of the same story.
Yeah.
And you certainly wouldn't want a book from Alex's point of view the whole way through.
No.
And from Elijah's point of view, I feel like it's almost so obvious, right? Like it's sort of like, of course what's happening is wrong, and of course you want him to win, and of course you just want to step on everybody else. Like it's almost not interesting. I like to write books where the reader just feels mentally engaged, right? And the complement of their narratives gives you that crunchy stuff to think about, whether you or not somebody likes somebody or the way the plot goes or whatever. That's totally fine with me. I respect a reader response. Lots of people read it through and say, wow, I really hated X, Y, and Z person, didn't get their comeuppance or whatever. And but the point is that it is something to think about.
Yeah. One of the things you did with the point of view that I thought was really interesting is, I don't want to go into the plot too much, but there's a point where Elijah and Alex both are doing depositions for a court case. And instead of having the first person be the person being deposed, is that the word?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're a paralegal, so I
am.
You have it from the other one watching the deposition. And I found that really interesting. It gave a really good complexion to going through that, and I think it was a really clever choice.
So for me, picking the point of view has to do with which character is going to undergo the most sort of like, I don't want to just say drama, which sort of feels superficial, but who's having the most like notable reaction internally to the scene. So like, for example, this is not like a moment in Docile, but if you had 2 characters and one was going to say I love you to the other, like, and it was going to be a big emotional moment, like the person saying I love you has probably been thinking about it for a while. It might have already been a thing that is shown like in their point of view earlier in the book, them being like, I think I love this person, whatever. The moment though, when they say I love you, what is, might be interesting is for the person hearing it for the first time, like what is their reaction? And I want to see that in real time in their head. So, these depositions, I thought it was more important to show how the other person was seeing it play out, especially since they don't have the insight. Like Alex knows he's supposed to be saying the things his lawyers have told him to say. That's not a surprise. We know that he probably feels bad about that. But, Elijah doesn't know that, and it's the first time seeing Alex in a while when the depositions happen. And so it is a very intense experience for him. And I have a friend who is also in the legal field and sent me a private message to say that he, really enjoyed the book, and then was like, but I didn't expect you to go full into depositions, and you truly just gave a transcript. And I was like, yes, I did, because I've read many deposition transcripts. And I always have, I've been asked previously, like, oh, did you ever think you'll use your day job? That's like a frequent panel at conventions, right? How do you use your day job in your books? And like, I was always like, never, I will never write a legal thriller. And I sort of wrote a legal thriller.
Towards the end, it becomes a legal thriller.
Accident. But I guess it's good, the day job paying off.
Yeah. Well, we're going to try something that we've never done on Faster Forward before. with Kellen here. It's this is the inaugural time we're going to do a reading. We haven't done that before, but I've heard Kellen read, and he's very good at it. So we
Thank
thought
you.
we'd give it a shot. So you're going to read, I believe, from the opening of Docile,
Yes, I'm. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
and then also from the opening of your new book, which is coming out next year.
Yes, I love beginnings, and the insight they give into characters. So I thought I would just read the first couple pages from Docile, and then the first couple pages from my new book, First Become
Okay, and
Ashes.
when the reading's done, we'll be back and we will chat a little bit more. So
Absolutely.
read away.
On the other side.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Just for anyone listening, there should be no inappropriate material in this first couple of pages, but just be aware of the subject matter of this book. Chapter 1, Elijah. After today, I will have 7 rights. 1, I whisper, retention of the right to vote in a public election. 2, the right to adequate care, food, water, shelter, hygiene, and regular medical attention. Abby rolls around in her little bed. The old wood squeaks as she settles back under the covers. That's the only right that would have done my younger sister any good. Here, she'll make do with the occasional medical clinic and home remedies. 3, the right to anonymity of surname. I squeeze my eyes shut. Pressure builds between my brows. After today, I won't be a Wilder. 4, I pluck the photo of my family from the windowsill. The right to one personal item. It's the same one Mom took with her. She won't miss it. She probably can't even remember it. That visit was the last time she was anything like herself. We had our picture taken by a man at the fair. His camera had an old-fashioned lens that reminded Dad of his childhood. It was years ago anyway. Abby was only a baby, all wrapped up in swaddling. Dad still had his beard, a smile nestled in the middle. I'd just grown one tiny hair on my chin and couldn't wait to show Mom how manly I was becoming. 5, I resume my count. The right to personal physical safety. My heart beats a little faster. 6, the right to sexual health and protection from pregnancy. A breeze cools the heat on my face. Between school and work and helping around the house, I've never had time for relationships. And I've certainly never had time for sex. Where would I have done it anyway? On my mattress on the floor next to my little sister's bed? I know a few guys who use the community barn, but between the squawking and cow shit, I could never bring myself to join them. Besides, I'm counting on 7th right to save me from anyone who tries to violate 6th. 7, the right to refuse or demand docilin, and at any time to change your mind. I rise from bed as quickly as possible and pull on my jeans. No sense in changing my shirt. I put on an old pair of sneakers, leave my good boots for my sister. She'll grow into them eventually. I doubt they let Dociles keep their clothing. One personal item. I slip the family photo in my pocket and tiptoe out of our room without waking Abby. Regret tugs at my heart and I close the door. I didn't even say goodbye. Not a word or a kiss on the cheek while she slept. Nothing. Not for her, not for Dad. I linger at his bedroom door for a moment before going back to the kitchen. Mom doesn't look up from the floor. She sweeps back and forth over the same worn-down spot, even when I put my hand on her shoulder. Hey, Mom, it's Elijah. Hello, Elijah. I hold on to the moment when I can pretend she remembers I'm her son and that it's not 10 years of docilin bending her to politeness. I miss you so much. That's nice, she says, her voice smooth as fresh churned butter. I wanted to let you know I'm not mad at you. I take the broom with no resistance and lean it against the wall. Okay, she smiles, but her eyes are empty, expressionless. And I love you. Okay. I understand why you left us, and when you're better someday, okay. I pause. It would be easier if she didn't reply at all, rather than in the same monotonous voice, following the same script over and over. Someday, I hope you'll forgive me for doing the same. That's nice. I need your signature. I flatten the Office of Debt Resolution form on the table and find her a pen. My parents aren't married, not legally anyway. Get married and you, and your children, inherit your partner's debt. Like each of them don't have enough separately. No, this is the form that signs both of my parents' debts over to me so I can sell it. Sell it all. Dad already signed, assuming it was for Abby, like we'd discussed. It was that or wait for the police to drag us all off to debtor's prison. They only send out so many notices. I trace the scar tissue that patterns the inside of my left wrist. The mark stands out, dark and ropey from years under the sun, a fat S with a U slicing down its middle. If I close my eyes, I can still smell the $sign burning into my flesh, hear the cops calling me a drain on society. Mom finishes her signature, dots the I's in Abigail, and stares at me, still smiling, waiting for my next order. Thanks, Mom. I kiss her cheek. You're welcome, Elijah. I fold the paper and hold it tight, afraid to lose it. One more stop before the ODR. I lock the door behind me and bury my key in the flower pot on the porch. When I look up, I see the Falstaff's front door open and close, one house over. Dylan stuffs her socked feet into oversized boots. She crosses her arms to secure an old crocheted blanket over her pajamas and hops over, still squeezing her shoes into place. Where are you running off to? Can I come? The two of us have snuck out more times than I can count. Midnight swims in the reservoir, talks on the bridge, our bare feet dangling over the edge. That time we walked to Hunt Valley for a party in one of the old office buildings and ended up sleeping in an abandoned unit overnight, talking about what we'd do if we didn't stand to inherit our parents' debts. I'd go to University of Maryland, get my teaching degree, put all that tutoring I've done to good use. She'd travel to an elephant sanctuary in Thailand that she read about in an old book. I told her it probably didn't exist anymore. She told me to mind my own dreams. I smile at the memory, but hers fades when she sees the forms in my hand. I tuck them under my arms, but it's too late. Dylan knows me better than anyone. She's practically my second sister. After her father took his life, and it became clear that my mother was no longer herself, Dad and Nora began spending more time together. We have 3 surnames between us, but we're still a family. Even after what our parents went through, what we're dealing with now. I have to. I have trouble looking into her eyes. We received a final notice. The interest is... She wraps her arms around me before I can finish. Warm together inside the blanket, I never want to leave. I don't want you to go, she says, voice muffled against me. I don't either, but it's me or Abby. I know, she says. Just seems like everyone's leaving lately, and too few of them come back. Even fewer like their regular selves. Don't worry, I won't let that happen to me. Well, do what you have to, but it gets too hard. Talk to your caseworker. Her father hadn't. He didn't make it. I will. And I'll see you in 6 months, okay? For your visit. Dylan drapes her blanket around my shoulders. Don't freeze to death on your way. She shouldn't waste it on me. I'll have to give it up, but I'm too cold to refuse. When I slide out of her grasp, I know I can't go back for another hug, or I'll run inside to do the same with Dad and Abby, and then I'll never leave. There's no time to waste. Last I heard, the walk from Pretty Boy Reservoir to Baltimore City took 12 hours. And that is Docile. And I'm just going to read a very short excerpt from First Become Ashes, which galleys are out now. This book is about a young man who was raised in a cult to believe that he can do magic. Chapter 1. Lark. Now. The fence that surrounds Druid Hill is 10 feet tall and made from wrought iron. It encloses the 745 acres the Fellowship of the Anointed calls home. Along the east side of the hill, at the foot of the bridge, resides the only gate. In my 24 years, 9 months, and 3 days, I have never known an anointed one to pass through it. Until today. Until Cain. I stand with him and the other anointed. The toes of our boots overlap a red line painted across the road, exactly 50 feet inward from the gate, the fence's weakest spot. Across it, fellows gather to see Cain off. They're allowed to cross the line. They have nothing to lose. My fingertips tingle. Head feels light. We shouldn't even be this close. And Kane is going to cross the line, going to cross the threshold of the fence. The backs of our hands bump. When I feel his fingers slide between mine, I grip them hard. I know it's an honor to go into the world. We've trained our whole lives to slay the monsters that have corrupted and influenced those beyond the fence for generations. Kane for 25 years. I for 24 years, 9 months, and 3 days. Isn't that close enough to go with him? He shouldn't be out there alone. Maybe Nova will allow it. We can be each other's strength. Coming through, a body bumps between ours, head turning. Darren looks over their shoulder at Kane as they walk towards the gate, as if it were his fault. Their lips purse as they toss their long, loose hair over their shoulders. It falls across their wool shawl and soft, flowing dress. I run my fingers over one of the 3 French braids that holds mine back. Darren doesn't wear their hair back. They don't need to. Despite their insistence that we are siblings, Darren and I look nothing alike, not in the least because they are a fellow and I'm anointed. They don't wear denim and long sleeves to protect their limbs from sparring in the woods, don't require a leather harness to carry weapons and potions, don't spend hours every day running around the lake, strengthening their muscles so they can fight a literal monster. Their days are spent mending and making clothes. Mine are filled with training and the intimacy of the anointed, with fire and sweat and scholarship, with ritual and righteous discipline. The anointed are my real family, and Nova is our leader. She raised us. The fellows who conceived us mean nothing. I don't even like knowing their names. I wish Darren had never told me. Don't, Kane says. You can't let them fluster you. It dilutes my magic, I know. I press my tongue against the roof of my mouth, comforted by the pressure of the warm metal barbell that pierces it and makes my words more powerful. He deflates, looks at his feet and purses his lips as if to keep himself from saying more. I squeeze Kane's hand. His fingers are hot and sweaty between mine. Is he nervous? Before I go, he turns to look me in the eye. His are so dark brown they're almost black. They shine in the moonlight just like his hair. I release my hold, reach up and run my hands down its length one last time, rest my palms flat on his chest. I'm not sure I can say goodbye again, especially not in public. We did this last night. I try to blink away the tears before they can erupt. I know. Kane covers my hand with his, curling his fingers around mine. We slide naturally together, his arms encircling my back, mine his waist. We hold each other so tight my body begins to tingle. Just remember what I said. He kisses my hairline, the few strands that freed themselves during the day. I was mostly asleep, but won't ever forget his words. To them, I add, you love me, I love you. Don't forget that either. Kane tips my chin up, and then his lips are on mine, strong and sure. As we kiss, all I can focus on is the soft stroke of his thumb over my cheek. When he pulls back, I feel the memory of his touch against my face, though my lips are cold and alone. And that is where I will leave First Become Ashes, which comes out April 6th, 2021.
Hey, that was really good. Now I've got to read the book.
This book,
I'll
yes,
have
you
to go
can pre-order it,
that.
preferably at your indie bookstore, so we can all help them out. Yeah, this is
That's from
another
coming out from Tor,
Tor.com
right?
book. And so Lark believes that he and his fellow anointed ones are going to go out into the world and save it from monsters and that they can do magic. And this is not a spoiler, it's right in the copy. But they find out at the end of the first chapter that the SWAT team has been sent in to break up their cult and tell them that none of it is real. But Lark decides he believes what he believes anyway, and he goes on a road trip to discover if monsters are real and fight them with magic. So, as I read these side by side, it betrays my it betrays my sort of style and something that I love to do even more, which is write people leaving immediately.
That's a good point.
I think that is just such a leaving endings have always just been some of the hardest parts of my life. Not hardest parts of my life, like hard, but like emotionally, when someone leaves you, or when you leave a space you've been in for a long time, or, not getting to say goodbye or saying goodbye, like those are all things that really stick with me sort of emotionally. And so I don't start my third book with leaving, but I do start my first two with leaving.
That's right, because you're already contracted for a third book from Tor.
Yes.
Which is using the character from Small Changes Over Long Periods of Time, the gay trans man who is turned into a vampire.
Yes.
And what that means physically for his body.
Yeah.
It was fascinating to me.
It was fascinating for me to write too, because I was like, I don't know what the answer to this is. Yes. If I ever get bitten by a vampire,
I hadn't thought about it. It's like hadn't gone through my brain, and I'm reading this, and I'm going, oh damn. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why. I'd been transitioning for a little while, and I just all of a sudden was like, hey, hold on a second, vampires, what are you guys doing with your tropes? I want to know what's going to happen in my body, because I would like to be a vampire. Thank you very much. That book is, all of my books touch on sort of like serious topics and that are relevant to today's world, even though my books are not necessarily set in like today's world, or I say alt near future, which just means like alternate history is like something changed. There are things that are different that led to where we are now. Same sort of thing with my books, but the tone of my third book, my vampire book, has more jokes in it, let's just say. And the character is a brat who has like some sass going on in his head pretty much all the time, whereas the first two of my books are extremely serious. I don't know that there's almost any that's not true. There are some lighthearted references in First Become Ashes, because one of the character points of view is a professional cosplayer, like with a Patreon and everything, and he's constantly dropping nerd references, and when he meets Lark, he's like, oh my god, a real wizard, this is the best moment of my life. Which, like, isn't it the dream, meet a hot gay wizard, fall in love on a road trip, hopefully don't die.
Yes. And so the next book, the one with Finn, the vampire in it, again, like Docile, you have a bureaucracy there behind the change. In Docile, it's the Office of Debt Reduction, I think is what it is.
Office of Debt Resolution.
Resolution, which is a whole. And in the vampire one, there's the Federal Vampire Commission, because vampires are out. People know they're there. There's rules and there's laws and there's stuff about what you can do and not do as a vampire.
Yep. And so most vampires, actually, this is like, I feel like I haven't watched True Blood in forever, but I feel like in True Blood it was like vampires are here and we've been doing things for a long time a very specific way, but we're going to try to like integrate ourselves into society. But in the world of Small Changes / my untitled forthcoming third book, yes, there are like vampires who are sort of like we exist, but it's more of like you can become a vampire by like a medical process, which is gatekept, of course, by human doctors for some reason, which is not at all a direct parallel to like trans medical care being gatekept.
Not at all.
People. Not at all. But yeah, so that story, Small Changes, which is still probably one of my. I mean, Finley, I think, is my favorite character. Don't tell my other characters.
Just story that. shortlisted for the Hugo and the Nebula, right?
It was, which is certainly an experience when you write a story that has like a lot of trans angst and sex in it, because everyone reads it. I mean, that was really, they tell authors, don't you read your reviews, and I truly do not. And I learned that back when that story was shortlisted for the Nebula and Hugo, because they just send that into everybody's inbox who's
Yeah.
registered, thousands of people, and they're like, just read this and vote. And my audience is not everyone. And
We need to be clear. All of these stories have a lot of hot gay sex in them.
they have a lot of explicit content in them, which some people don't like in their science fiction. And I think everyone has a right to read whatever they want to read. Of course, you should not read explicit content if that's not what you want. But, that doesn't mean it doesn't belong in science fiction. I love writing sexual content as a way to like sort of explore. It's one of the moments when you are at your barest and your most intimate with another person or other people, and how you act in those moments can tell you so much about a character. And also, like, I'm very interested in bodies, and small changes over long periods of time, and thus my forthcoming vampire novel like focuses a lot on bodies, and queer bodies especially, like, are something that I feel like it's one of those things where it's like queer bodies sort of are revolutionary. We're doing things with our bodies that like society doesn't like, doesn't approve of, doesn't want us to be able to do, that they want to regulate, etc. And to show people with those bodies like having intimate moments with other people is not something that I think most readers of science fiction are used to. And I hope that reading it will sort of help people see things differently. And I also, cis people, and I also think that, it will show queer people and trans people that, like, we deserve these moments too. And they're hot. And,
We're heroes too.
if I can get enough people to read my stuff such that they think it's hot, then like maybe it will be everywhere. And my goal is just to produce like more people. If my books could just be a comp for other people's books, we could have more of this in the world. That's my true ambition.
And the whole body thing in Nothing is Pixels here.
Oh,
That
yes.
was
Old
so
story.
like explicit there. And and I found that fascinating. Go find that story, read it. It's like really cool.
It's one of those stories that it's very hard to talk about because like the whole plot is a spoiler, but
that's true. Yeah. I was trying to not say what
I know. It's about
body isn't what you think it is.
Right. So the protagonist, Ash, lives in like a virtual reality, basically, and thus like has a virtual body, which he can touch and have. He has sex with his partner in that, and they live together in this virtual space, and it feels real, but he sort of gets anxious about what his real body might be, and he wants to interact with the real air quotes body of his partner. And so they see if they talk through whether or not this is a thing that should happen. So that's sort of the plot of that story.
Yeah I really liked it. It was like fascinating.
Thank you.
By the way, congratulations, you just bought a new house.
I did just buy a new house.
You're a homeowner.
I can't, thank you to, publishing is like winning the lottery. It's very hard to do. And the irony of all irony is I would not have been able to pay off my student loans without selling my book about how bad debt and loans are. But I, was just able to buy my first house. I'm very excited. I paint all over my hands, which like I don't think actually is super visible. I was doing art on my walls at like literally 3 a.m. But I'm very excited. And I love Baltimore, so I'm living here.
Oh, by the way, Kathy was telling me that the name of the story we were talking about didn't come across well. It's called Nothing is Pixels Here.
Yes.
And Google it.
It's from Queers Destroy Science Fiction, which came
Yeah.
out in like 2015 or something now. A long time ago.
A long, long time ago. So, are you still going to be writing short fiction, or are you just purely a novel writer now?
So, I definitely have ideas every now and then where I'm like, oh, this is going to be a novel. And then my friend Sarah Pinsker, who is also an incredible writer, we in the before times sat and wrote together a lot in coffee shops.
Sarah was on with us just recently.
Oh, cool. Yeah. We would be talking and I'd say, I have this idea. She's like, well, maybe that's short fiction, your idea. And I'm like, oh, right, short fiction. Most of it is that I don't have time to write both short stories and novels because short stories actually feel harder to me than novels. I'm in the rhythm of novels. I think long term when it comes to character and plot, and short stories are so much more focused, and it's really about that like sort of one moment and everything that like comes together for it. And that's very difficult for me. Some people have that short fiction brain. I don't. Every now and then I have an idea that is perfect for short fiction. I also occasionally will do like solicitations if someone asks me to write short fiction for money. But I mostly write novels. I actually did have a short story out this year through Tor.com that I wrote like many years ago now, called We're Here, We're Here. And it's about a boy band. This is also a body story. So many of my stories are about bodies.
I just saw that.
Yeah, it's about a guy named Tyler who is in a boy band that was sort of put together by a corporation. And the members of the boy band all have a voice implant installed so that their singing will be perfect or better or whatever. And the story sort of talks about how it explores acceptable forms of masculinity sort of like through the different roles that the boy band members take, and also how that is controlled, and how much of your voice is really your own. It is of course nefarious. I see a question.
Yes, from Veronica. Are you planning to return to Docile's world?
I do not have plans to return to Docile's world, which I know a lot of people read it were like, when's the sequel coming out? But the thing is, for me, like, I feel like people want to know what's going to happen to everyone, and will they get together or will they go their separate ways, and will certain people, be punished in different ways, and how will they change their lives? And Docile is the end of one arc, but it is very much the beginning of another. And part of it is that I don't necessarily know what changes that world what changes that world for the better is obviously the entire system being torn down. I don't know how to do that. I don't claim to have the answers. I'm good at pointing out problems and leaving them up for discussion. If I knew how to fix them, I would not be writing novels. I would be out fixing them. I'd be out fixing them. But, another thing that I've talked about with some people is sort of redemption arcs, and Nora Jemison and I talked about this a little bit, because lots of people don't like redemption arcs, but you'd be surprised at the number of people who do and are like, oh, I hope they get together. I hope he becomes better. And like, that's sort of, where we leave things is, can people become better? Like, can Alex ever redeem himself? Like, I don't really believe in redemption arcs because I don't think that's a thing. Like, when you've wronged a person and people, like whether you can make that up to somebody or to an entire society is solely individual, to every single person you've affected. You don't get to decide that you're redeemed. I certainly, as the author, would not be getting to think that I could, put specific things that redeemed a person for every individual that Alex has harmed, which is thousands of people.
Yeah.
He has, I don't want to spoil the book for anyone who still has not read, but he, part of his emotional journey is sort of like seeing beyond the veil, which is an experience that lots of people have, and he is still part of a horrific system, and has only begun to sort of like chip at the iceberg of what it might mean to even come close to redemption, which I don't think is real. But that's a lot of work, and I sort of like to leave that open for people. Lots of people have feelings about the way it should go, and I encourage them to write fan fiction that they don't show to me.
That's a good fan fiction.
Work that out, because that's the whole point. Is I love to hand people crunchy things and let them sort of crunch on them. Like a dish that's crunchy. You're chewing on it for a long time.
Let me ask you something, because you talked about not having the short fiction brain and the way you like the longer. Does that mean you're an outliner when it comes to your work, your novels?
So it's funny, because short fiction, I absolutely outline every scene. Because you only have so many scenes. You can't just like go on a tangent and then it's like, wait a minute, 5,000 words later, you've passed the submission guidelines limit. For books, so what I do is I have like a pitch and a setup in mind. So like for Docile, I knew it was going to be about Elijah selling his debt to Alex. Pardon me. And then sort of like the emotional journey that those two went through after Elijah refused Docile. And for First Become Ashes, the cover of this just feels so soft and nice.
It's a nice cover.
Look how beautiful they are together. For First Become Ashes, I knew it was going to be about a young man who was raised by a cult to believe that he could do magic, and that the cult was going to be taken down by the SWAT team, and he was going to go on a road trip. But like I didn't have events planned. What I do usually is try to write down the major events, which is which is usually like 3-4 things, sort of like the stars in a constellation, right? And then they draw the little lines in between in the magazines in your horoscope. And then I need that space to sort of like figure things out in between those important parts, because there's just no way I can think of everything before digging in. I'm working on the vampire book right now, and I just wrote a whole scene where I was like, whoa, hold on. This dynamic was just like, one sentence that somebody said in the dialogue made me rethink a whole plot line for the book. And now I have to include that. I can't put things away that I think of in the moment. So I don't try to outline everything in advance. I know the major events, but I do allow things to come up naturally. And actually what I do is, after I finish my first draft, then I outline everything. I make a very detailed outline of everything that happened, and my editor and I usually have, a long chat. He reads the book. We have feedback. I have this very long outline, and then I usually try to, that's when I manipulate it with like sort of the feedback that I get from my editor. I move things around, delete them, add chapters in, stuff like that. But I don't really do a detailed outline until after I've written it, which I think makes me a little weird, but is very effective. I need that room in between.
There's nothing, all the writers are different. You guys are all so strange.
We're all great weirdos. some of the best moments, like the very detailed moments, the things that I love, in my things that I love in my own work, which sounds like full of myself, but you write because you enjoy doing it, right? So like these sort of aha moments of like seeing that, like, Elijah uses this phrase here and then uses it again, and it's like, oh, that's great, I can use that phrase again in this new chapter that I came up with, and it will be more impactful because it is like a regurgitated sort of like thing now, and I can use this to re-examine these three instances using the same phrase. Like, that's not a thing you can think about in advance. Like, not until you're in the moment, unless you're a genius. If anyone can do that, please tell me your secrets. I cannot, but I love sort of discovering those. And I think that those are moments that stick with readers a lot too. Like, you'll see, I think it's so in Docile, there is sort of this yellow line that is in the Office of Debt Resolution that, that the patrons, that's what they're called, are not allowed to cross because the debtors and their families are on the other side, like for sort of reunions. And I made that line up on the spot, and because it seemed pretty, like a nice image and also a great metaphor. And then later Alex references this line several times, in a way to sort of say, like, I've crossed not only a physical line but like an emotional line. And this crossing lines is sort of like a metaphor for, like, people's boundaries and how we interact with others. I never would have put that in an outline before I put pen to paper. But that's sort of the beauty of discovery writing, is that you get to come up with these little tidbits as you go, and then they're on your mind, so you can work them in later.
That's great. Thank you. I found that fascinating because how writers' minds work is really interesting to me. Because, like I said, you guys are all different. You all have different ways of working. Do you have a process? Because you have a day job.
I do.
Which has been, I assume you do it virtual.
At home now.
Yeah, you do it all at home
on my
now.
couch. One of the exciting things about moving is that I currently live in like a studio apartment, no desk, and work on my couch, which is why I miss coffee shops where I used to go write at a table. But I will have a space for a desk now. But wow, I totally forgot what you just asked me.
Oh, I was asking about, with the day job, do you have a particular times that you write? Do you say, well,
right.
I write from like 5 to 8 in the evening, and
I wish. So I'm a paralegal, and that is a time-demanding job because I bill my time too. So like I have to be 100% in the zone, doing that and fielding attorney questions, etc. Lately, I have been waking up at 9 a.m. and writing from 9 to 10, and then working from 10 to like 6 or 7. I was staying with a friend the whole summer because I was lonely, and she was too. And she is an incredible cook. She was making all the meals, which was so good. They're so delicious. I will not be eating, if you're watching this, Allie, thank you. I do not eat as well without you. But and I'm slower. I'm not great in the kitchen, so it takes me like an hour or two to get from start to finish, sort of. And so my evenings are usually wiped. Like I'm writing into the evening, eating dinner, then I want to relax for a little while, and then it's like 11, and I'm like, I guess I can write now, but I'm very tired. So usually I just play video games. So I know that if I get up in the morning, and by morning I mean literally like 9, I'm not like a 5 a.m.er, but if I can get that hour of writing done. And one of the things I really learned while I was writing my second book was to pace myself a little better. I think some people feel like they have productive or unproductive days. Something like that, like sort of aspiring to be traditionally published authors, I think, sort of struggle with sometimes. But like, I know that if I sit down, I set myself this really reasonable goal of 500 words an hour. I'm like, 500 words, it's not that much. It's not 1,000, which is a lot. It's not 250, which is almost nothing, it feels like. But if I write 500 words in an hour, I'm good. So often when I could go to the library, I would go to the library, my local public library, support your libraries in a safe way. I would go sit down and write 500 words, and then I would get to take a break until the top of the hour, and then I'd start again. 500 words, 500 words. I could get 3,000 words written in a single day that way. And I never could do that before. I was just like, why can't you write 500 words in an hour? That's totally acceptable number of words. So, yeah.
Well, we're about out of time. I want to thank you so much for taking time away from writing to join us here.
Absolutely. I'm going to go back to my house and paint some more. That's all I've done all week, 12-hour days. But
and that is I'm so thrilled that you bought a house. That's exciting.
Thank you. I'm very, very excited to finish writing my vampire book, though. And thank you for having me on and listening to me read from
that was great.
Docile.
You're a good
which
reader.
Is out now. Thank you. And First Become Ashes, which is pre-order for your local indies.
And I want to tell everyone watching, don't forget to subscribe, because that helps us keep these going. Hit the little up thing and like us down there, because that helps too. And if you click the bell, then you will be able to be told when we've got new ones of these coming out. You get reminders, and that's always good. And that we will be putting all of Kellen's ways you can contact him, his Twitter, his everything, down in the comments eventually. So keep an eye on that. We'll probably have a link and something about the new book and all that. Kellen,
I got lots of links.
This was I had a great time. Thank you.
Yeah, it's always wonderful to talk to you, Mike. And
it'll be nice when we can see each other in person at a convention and hang out.
I can't wait.
Yeah. So for everyone here at Fast Forward, this is Mike Zipser saying, take care and wear a damn mask.
Wear your mask.
Bye-bye.